Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending. Today, I'll be talking about cloud native and data centric systems application design for fast moving enterprises. Now, a little bit about myself. So, I have a PhD from University of Toronto, where my area of research was how to design fast-moving enterprises. What fast-moving enterprises? I'll get to that in a few minutes. It's something that I've been a bit passionate about. What are the design patterns? How to create enterprise information systems? How to design them? That would be characteristic of something that would allow you to move and respond very rapidly. In addition to that, I have considerable experience in developing mission critical enterprise grade applications that cover areas such as cloud computing, big data analytics, high performance computing, data engineering, and of course, artificial intelligence. So the way this talk is structured is there are going to be three areas. In the first area, I'll be explaining what a fast-moving enterprise actually means, and then we'll be defining certain technical requirements that would allow you to create solutions for a fast-moving enterprise, which are of course going to be cloud native and data centric. And in the third area, I'll be demonstrating what the architecture of some of these applications are going to look like. So if you are to implement something in a fast moving enterprise, what would that architectural solution look like? So, part one, explain. Okay, so a little bit about the background and context. Previously, and when I say previously, I mean many decades ago, it was easy to design enterprise solutions. Why? Because enterprises were more static, they were not that rapidly changing. The environment that an enterprise operated in, whether that was a social environment, whether that was an economic environment, that was a regulatory environment, that was slow moving. As a result, enterprises did not have a lot of pressure to change. They were able to devise a solution, they were able to devise a business model and operate in that mindset for a very long period of time. That was generally how organizations were set up, and that was something that was great at that time. However, as we've seen, there's a lot of innovation that is happening. And when I say innovation, I just don't mean technological innovation. I mean innovation in business, innovation in obviously digital technologies, innovation in regulations as well. New regulations are constantly coming in, whether it pertains to custom privacy. We talked about customer data privacy. So there are lots of regulations that are coming around here. So the environment is constantly changing. So organizations can no longer expect that once they've figured it out, that solution is going to be in place for a decade or more. Things are constantly changing. As a result, organizations have to constantly evolve and change. One thing that we've seen is cloud computing and data infrastructure based solutions are helping organizations move very rapidly, evolve very rapidly. So, that is something that organizations need to be very conscious of adopting and utilizing. So, what is a fast moving enterprise? So, rather than giving a dictionary definition, which can be boring, I thought let's try to see what a fast moving enterprise could actually be by observing certain aspects of that. Besides, there's no one definition for a fast moving enterprise. If you talk to 10 people, you'll get 10 different definitions. So let's just see what exists in a fast moving enterprise. The first is speed to market. Organizations that are fast moving generally produce goods and services and products and launch them to market very, very quickly. They would not wait they would not have things on the time scale of years. They would have it in the time scale of months or weeks or even sometimes days, especially those which are software based. There's a strong focus on customer. So there's a huge customer centricity of these fast moving enterprises. Why? Because customer trends change, they evolve with the seasons, they evolve with the economic environment, they evolve with the social context. So, as customer preferences change, organizations need to keep in tune with whatever the customer is demanding of them. So, they have to evolve and adapt accordingly. Fast moving enterprises further are digital first because they leverage digital technologies quite strongly. By default, they have a digital business model where they are launching products on a digital. Even retail organizations like the brick and mortar organizations, they also have a digital presence because now you can go online and you can order things online, right? That's something that we saw happen very rapidly during the pandemic. Even in healthcare, there are digital first solutions which are coming in. So now there is a digital first presence for pretty much every organization that hopes to move very rapidly and be customer centric. As a result, the business model has also changed. I mentioned digital first business model. Well, your business strategy, which then inspires your business model, that is centered around digital technologies. How do we get customers engaged? If your customers are mostly present on smartphones, well, how do we engage them through smartphones? How do we sell things to them using the digital devices that they're using or the digital technologies that that they are leveraging so much? So that is becoming a major focus of their business model. It's no longer divorced from digital technologies. It's actually encompassing that. Agility of services, that actually is a fairly big thing as well. So organizations that are fast moving have to be nimble, have to be agile. It doesn't matter how big they are or how small they are. Usually the expectation is that a smaller organization will be more nimble and agile. That's no longer true. Even larger organizations can be exceedingly agile, can be very responsive, can be exceedingly nimble to situations. So that is something that we are seeing. Large organizations are also trying to foster agility within them. Sometimes it's very successful, sometimes it can be challenging depending on the inertia within the organization, but there is a strong focus on agility. And finally, one other thing that you'll find about fast moving organizations is that they're very conscious of doing things faster by using automation, whether that is simple calculated information. For example, your operational reports, rather than someone tabulating all of the numbers by hand. Well, now you have applications that tabulate all of the numbers and prepare all the reports. But you're now going even further. Robotic process automation, that is coming about because you want to automate a number of processes. Well, not using robots, but using essentially bots, software bots, which are allowing you to automate a number of processes. Now you have cognitive agents which are coming in. Cognitive agents are those agents which are using artificial intelligence to make decisions that would previously require a human to make a decision. Should you approve a loan application or not approve a loan application? This was traditionally the responsibility of a person who would go through all of the data, not just in the form, the data that is present in the form, but also background information and other supplementary data, and then leverage that to make a decision whether a person is creditworthy or not. Well, now you can actually have a cognitive agent that takes in not just the primary information in the form, but also the alternate data that we discussed and heard about in a session by Serena earlier today, and then would make all of those kind of decisions. So cognitive based automation, robotic process automation, and generally process automation is now becoming a very big thing. So by identifying these aspects in an organization, you can then say, yeah, this is actually a fast moving enterprise. So, more formally, let's define certain characteristics of a fast moving enterprise. These would be four of them. Well, there are actually quite a number of them, but I decided to pick four just so that it's a little more focused, the conversation is more focused. The first characteristic is obviously rapid delivery. We discussed about it. It's essential to actually have your services launched very quickly. Time to market should be short or small. What does that actually mean? What it means is that as so in order to launch something, you have to go through a cycle, right? A product development cycle or a process execution cycle. Something needs to happen that constantly allows you to create a service and launch it to market, or create a product and launch it to market. You can improve the cycle of delivery by increasing the frequency. So rather than doing things once a day, you now do it twice a day. So in a factory, normally you would have shifts, right? Instead of having one shift a day, you do two shifts a day. Instead of two shifts a day, you do three shifts a day. So that's one way of doing having the higher frequency of execution leads to faster items getting into the market. But in knowledge based organizations, it's a little different. What you do is the time required to execute a certain process that is reduced, or the number of steps required to do something is then reduced as well. There was in a previous presentation, there was talk of Tesla, how Tesla is doing certain things, and that was again in context of data and how to actually see what the number of Teslas shipped into market was. So just to continue that example, Tesla does this remarkably well. What they're trying to do is, as part of the automation of manufacturing, they're reducing the number of steps required to manufacture a car. They're actually bringing something called a gigapress that allows you to mold the chassis of a car with less parts so that it's actually faster to do so. So, this is one way of increasing the delivery of your product to market through process automation, obviously bringing one previous point. Another characteristic of fast-moving organization is data. We've talked a lot about data. Data is essential for decision making in organizations. And what you'll find is as your data solutions are getting more sophisticated, as you're starting to build out data infrastructure within your organizations, you are able to leverage data in more and more ways. So rather it not just being operational in nature, you are also able to see your data being used for strategic decision making. What you'll find is there would now be creation of feedback loops in an organization just because now you have more data presence, more data infrastructure for sensing and responding. But you'll also see feed forward loops starting to come in an organization. Now, what's the difference between a feedback loop and a feed forward loop? Let me explain this using an example. So let's say I'm driving a car and there's a curve in the road, and I find myself in the road that has now curved, and I'm in the middle of that curved road. I would automatically reduce my speed because I need to make sure that I'm able to navigate that curve in the road safely. However, I may undercompensate or I may overcompensate this reduction in speed. It's difficult for me to know because I'm already in that curve. So I may, sometimes there's such small chance that I actually may understeer, oversteer, and which leads to a crash or be in a precarious position. So that is an example of feedback loop. I realize something has happened, and then I'm acting on that phenomena that has happened. A feed forward loop is a little different. Using the same example, I'm driving along a road and I see there's a curve ahead on the road. So, automatically anticipating that something needs to be done, I slow my speed down so I'm able to enter the curve at a reduced speed, at a reduced velocity, and then safely navigate that curve. This means that I have better control as I'm going into the curve and I'm able to exit the curve without potentially having an accident. So that's an example of a feed forward loop. You're anticipating and expecting what is happening. So, and translating that into data science and data analytics, that's where prescriptive, predictive, descriptive analytics starts coming in. You're able to do more and more things, sophisticated things, based on the types of feedback and feed forward loops that are being created within your organization. The third characteristic of fast moving enterprise is capability based structures. Sorry, I'm a little behind in my slides. So the third is capability-based structures. What does capability-based structures actually mean? In an organization, you'll again see there are various departments. Like you'll have marketing, you'll have sales, you'll have finance, you'll have IT. So these are natural collection of functions, aggregation of functions that exist within an enterprise. So, but capabilities goes beyond that. What you do is you identify core competencies in an organization, like in a bank, you would identify these are the core competencies that exist, and you wrap them around capabilities that these are the capabilities that an organization contains or should contain. And there are certain capabilities that would not be present. So you either bring them in, you start building them in within the organization, or you're able to partner with another organization to actually build out those capabilities or to supplement those capabilities. So this is essential to identify, because when you have capabilities identified in an organization and you have some kind of heat map that shows how well those capabilities are, or how to the degree that you have those capabilities, you devise processes and you devise technology solutions to supplement or to support those capabilities, and that allows you to quickly innovate in an area, or it allows you to quickly build up a capability or spin it down as required. So let's suppose if a company wants to enter into a new area, well, a greenfield area, well, you'll build out those capabilities and you can do that very quickly. Maybe you are exiting an area, in which case you can whittle down that capabilities again very quickly if you know exactly which those capabilities are. And the final characteristic that I like to talk about are multi speed organizations. So, again, fast moving organizations have multiple speeds. Now, what does that mean? If I go back a few decades ago, organizations typically ran at the same speed, meaning that it was most of the work was manual based. The organization ran at the speed of the individual, right? There were a number of individuals coming together to provide some kind of function, some kind of service, and generally the organization would work at human speed, at the speed at which the individuals worked. Now, as you started bringing in mechanical computation or even digital computation, the organization started moving faster. When you adopted computational technologies in a certain department, that department runs a little faster just because it allows you to compute faster. As we've seen in modern organizations, this has been taken to a level where now you have multiple speeds, particularly for fast moving organizations and for this conference. I'd like to mention two speed organizations, or even they're sometimes called bimodal organizations. One part of the organization, and we'll discuss this more towards the end of this presentation, one part of the organization moves a lot faster. That part is innovative, it is focused on the customer, it tries to align itself with the customer's requirements. And the other part of the organization is a little more traditional, it's built around legacy systems, it tries to be more stable and less disruptive just because you want to make sure that the core business functionality does not get affected very quickly, very rapidly. That's what the organization has been built on for the last few decades. So these are two speed organizations that we normally find. To give an example, any bank that you consider right now has a digital wing to it, right? You talk about even retail organizations like a big organizations like Loblaw. Loblaw has a digital wing. It's called Loblaw Digital. Same goes for banks. There's a digital wing. That is an example of a two-speed organization where you have the digital part of the organization that is more focused on giving digital solutions to customers, and then you have the traditional part of the organization that is built on decade-old business models and is very stable and is very regulatory approved. Okay. So the second part of my presentation talks about defining this. So while I've explained what a fast-moving enterprise is using lots of examples and attributes and characteristics, now I'd like to define what the technical requirements for such an organization is before I actually go and present a solution for building a fast-moving organization. So, what are technical requirements? See, when we understand a business problem, that business problem needs to be translated into a set of technical requirements, both functional and non functional in nature, that would allow you to build something against those requirements. What are functional requirements? Functional requirements are usually things that provide some kind of functionality. Non-functional requirements are usually how well you do a feature, like how low cost is it, how fast is it, what is the performance of that, how stable, reliable it is. So those are non-functional attributes. So any solution needs to encompass both functional and non-functional side. It's nice to be able to articulate what the business need is and then have technical requirements against that. Just because when you start doing this exercise against a number of organizations, you're able to abstract that out. You're able to bring together that knowledge and then become more knowledgeable and leverage it in many different ways. So, what does that actually mean? That means is that you're able to come up with a set of design patterns that allow you to influence how a solution should look like. A design pattern is a common way of solving a business problem. So, for example, if a business problem is I want to be able to rapidly launch something, well, you need by and this is not a problem that one organization would be facing. This is a problem that many organizations would be facing. So by learning from many different organizations, you're able to say that, you know what, this is what the business situation is, launching a product very rapidly, and this is how we can go about doing it. So the design pattern is a common solution to a problem that exists across many organizations. So what we do is by understanding this need for fast moving organizations, we are able to come up with a number of design patterns. Each design pattern is going to be covering a different area. And again, I'll give examples of that. So these design patterns that we'll be talking about today are cloud native and data centric. Of course, right? Everything is based on the cloud, everything is data centric. So these are going to be cloud native and data centric design patterns. These design patterns would have something that is devised at design time, and then something that is devised at at instantiation time as well. So these are two sides to the design pattern, and they allow you to handle different things. So, what are the attributes of these templatized solutions or these architectural design patterns? So, again, there are many of them. I decided to pick five of the ones which are more common that you'll encounter more. And these are some of them are listed over here. So let's take the first one, cloud native. So everything is cloud native these days. Why? Because cloud has too many advantages to ignore. And again, this is not a pitch on cloud, so I won't go into the details, but the idea is that it allows you to provision infrastructure. It allows you to bypass a lot of the processes that govern IT procurement that exist in different organizations. It allows you to experiment very quickly, right? Remember we talked about fast moving enterprises. One of the things is that you want rapid experimentation. Well, cloud allows you to do that. You can spin something up within minutes and then tear it down within minutes as well. The cost for doing that may be a few dollars, maybe a few tens of dollars, depending on how heavy that infrastructure is. So that's the advantage of cloud. So it allows you to do things very rapidly. So inherently, any templatized solution for a fast moving enterprise would have a cloud native design pattern. These can cover both public and private and hybrid and multi-cloud environments. That's actually quite a thing. Organizations now don't want to be tied to a single vendor, to a single cloud vendor. They want to be multi-cloud, meaning they want to have something running on Google, something on Azure, and something running on AWS. And at the end of the day, they want everything to be visible to them from one single pane of glass. The second is configurable. Configurable means that every time you do something, there may be certain changes. Now, this is well known in artificial intelligence. Every time you create a model or you train a model, there'll be some different parameter tuning that you'll be doing. But the same phenomena exists at an enterprise level as well. If you're spinning something up on the cloud, it may be the case that you're spinning the same thing again and again, but equally it's possible that you may be spinning something up that is slightly different. Either your resource allocation may be a little different, you may have more heavy resource utilization, so you would spin something that is bigger or more powerful, or you may be doing something that is first runs on one cloud and then you run it on another cloud just to get a difference of comparison, those kind of things. So there has to be a degree of configurability. So your templatized solutions should be able to take parameters in that allow you to configure things at instantiation time. The third attribute is instantiatable, meaning you should be able to rapidly instantiate everything and then at the same time tear it down, right? Since, again, this is a little different from traditional IT procurement where you're able to procure something but which can take days or weeks or months. But once you have procured that, you're left with it. Like if you just need it for 2 days, now what are you going to do with this server that you've acquired and procured? With cloud, you can actually spin something up and tear it down. With data infrastructure, you can spin it up and tear it down as needed. So that is something that is fairly advantageous. Why is this important? Because it's common sense, but why is it important to mention out over here? The reason is, as you are fast moving, you want to do a lot of experimentation. You don't know what's going to work or not, right? There'll be lots of things that are not going to work. So that's why the cost of spinning something up and then tearing it down should actually be fairly low. Data centricity, we've talked about it. You want to be customer centric. You want to be able to make decisions that reflect the environment that an organization exists in. So anything that you spin up needs to have a solid data infrastructure built in, a data architecture built in, a data governance model built in that allows you to have that attribute. And the last one that I'll talk about is being able to integrate. Remember, we talked about capabilities earlier, that a modern, fast moving organization is built around a collection of capabilities that all come together. One thing is that those capabilities are reflected in different servers, solutions, applications, but more commonly, they're now being known as microservices. So you have these solutions which are microservice based architectures, they're based off the microservices based architecture. And and the idea is that you want to be able to integrate all of them together. You'll be using lots of cloud services. You'll be using lots of services which are provided by a vendor. You want to be able to integrate into them. You want to have an ecosystem of these services. So the idea is that these templatized solutions should be having integratability baked into them. So I just have a few minutes left, so I'll actually demonstrate this using, again, an architectural example. So let's take an example of a hypothetical organization. This is a bank, a hypothetical bank that is a modern bank that is being designed around the needs of today. It has to be fast moving. This organization would have, again, as mentioned previously, two areas. One is going to be customer focused, and the other is going to have the traditional back-end applications, the core banking applications, if you will, that are huge, that are monolithic, that are being developed over many decades of business models and experiences. So the idea is both of these need to come together: the customer-centric enterprise systems and the stable back-end enterprise systems. The bank cannot operate in one side or the other. It has to encompass both of them, and both of them should be coming together under a set of contracts that allow them to talk to each other. So, what does the architectural solution look like? So this is an example of um, uh, a GCP-based, a Google Cloud-based solution. Of course, it could be an equivalent AWS-based, an Azure-based solution as well. But for example, this is where your core banking applications exist. This is where the bank's main applications actually exist. So you have different kind of channel services, alternate delivery channels, and the traditional delivery channels. All of them are coming together. You have your applications all over there. And then you have, of course, the core banking applications, the core application services, which are typically part of any organization. This is what an organization has been doing for many, many decades. Now, we can't obviously remove all of these and build the bank from the ground up. That is next to impossible. So, what do we do? Well, we first actually expose all of these capabilities in the form of services, and that is typically done through an API gateway. So, what is an API gateway? It's a channel, or it's a way of accessing the bank's core services, which are present over there, which are built over many, many decades. Once you have your services all exposed and built out, you can start introducing cloud to it. So all the cloud services, the infrastructure services around security, around networking, around privacy, we talked about data privacy, all of that starts coming in. And you start making sure that all of that is integrated in your core solutions, which have been built over the last many decades on the on-prem data center. Continuing from that, in order to make the organization, so now you have a cloud native organization, but now you're trying to build a data architectural solution in it as well, make it more data centric, right, as we've discussed. So for that, you start extracting all of the data in the form of ELT pipelines, and that is where you're taking it out, bringing it into a single data warehouse, depending on the solution, or maybe even a data mesh solution. We've been talking about data meshes a lot recently. So there may be a data mesh that the organization is now adopting that actually starts coming in. Once that data mesh solution or that data architectural solution is, and you have all of your data into a data warehouse, you can then start building enterprise services around it. So these could be risk services, these could be operational reports, and then, of course, the final data science solution that would allow you to do predictive, prescriptive, descriptive analysis, even artificial intelligence as needed. And your design patterns would have commonalities and variabilities as discussed to allow you to have configurable options. And that's it. That's all that I had. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.